Well, hello. We're back. I'm back. And this is going to be another short episode in which I want to eventually turn this into more of like a book reading corner or a book review, whatever you want to call it. But I want to use some of these moments to go over what I do in my spare time, which spare time is probably not the word because I don't have a lot of that. However, when I have downtime, sometimes I like to read books.
Welcome to Simply Walk the Talk. Our bodies and minds adapt to what we do most of the time. If you want to change your body and mind, you must change what it is you do most of the time. This podcast explores all things health, wellness, fitness, lifestyle, and biohacking. Stay tuned as we explore various thoughts, methods, and experiences from a multitude of conversations between our interesting guests and experts through many fields of work. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Simply walk the talk. Simply walk the talk.
This is one that I recently read called Exercised by Daniel Lieberman. It's The Science of Physical Activity, Rest, and Health. And so I know I briefly touched on this whenever I did a previous episode, but I kind of quickly went over it. I glossed over it just to kind of give some highlights and some overviews. But in this session today, I want to go over it a little bit more in depth because this has become a book in which I refer to quite a bit. I've always been a fan of Daniel Lieberman's work, and I feel like this is something worth mentioning to those because I don't want to harbor all of this information and get people to think that it's just my information. I think we all borrow information from thought leaders like Daniel Lieberman. And so I want to unveil some of these concepts that are in the book that I think are important. In fact, I think several of you realize that I use this app called Readwise, and it's a pretty cool app. Like, it looks like this. If you're watching the video portion of this podcast, you see that it has my daily review. So the daily review basically is when I'm reading a book, whether it's digitally or it's a physical book, I can take a photo of a page or take a screenshot of one of the pages, and then I can select and highlight what I want to go in as like a highlight moment. And so all of these daily reviews, those are all various highlights. And so they create a highlight feed. And then based on the settings that I have, it will spit out anywhere from like 5 to 10 different highlights in the highlight feed. And so this will come from various books. It's almost like creating flashcards because let's face it, when we read a lot of books, I'm someone that likes to read a lot. It's almost impossible to keep up with the amount of information that I get from every single book. And I find that sometimes people do go back and reread a book, but it's almost like you've forgotten it once you absorb the next book and so on and so forth. So I like to wake up, and it's not like I do this first thing in the morning, but throughout my day, I'll open this app and I'll just kind of peruse some of the highlights that I've highlighted from previous books that I've read. And I really enjoyed that because sometimes the message that comes up as a highlight might be very pertinent to what I'm dealing with in the moment, which is pretty cool. It's like a synchronicity, if you will. And then there's other times when I'll go, oh, you know what? I forgot all about that. Let me go back and do some more research on that topic or whatever. So I really love this app. Again, it's called Readwise. And so what I'll do is I'll go in to, like, if I want to add a highlight, I just click add highlight at the bottom, and then you can either take a photo of it or you can add it via text by typing it in. You can also sync with your different apps. And so what I'm going to do is go in and search. So here is some of my recent books at the bottom here. So I talked about ballistic. Here's the Foot and Ankle Bible. This is exercised, and this one is the STEM Regen book. These are just some of the recent ones. And so, since we're talking about the book Exercise today, I'm going to click on that, and it'll show the top highlights that I have in here, and I can tag them. And yeah, it just helps to remind me what it is that I thought was interesting while I was reading the book, no matter what I was doing. So this is pretty cool because what I want to do is go over some of the highlights that I selected, and then I'll go to the Amazon sort of the book summary. And so I think first and foremost, I'll read off this first highlight that I have because it's based on the name of the book. It's called Exercised, which is a present tense adjective, right? And so the definition here as an adjective, exercised means to be vexed, anxious, worried, harassed. So those are all kind of like negative scenarios, right? Like it's those are negative connotations around the word exercised. And I think that lays a perfect groundwork for what the book is to be all about. Because I think most people, when they look at the book, they think exercise, which would be a noun, and they think of the noun here, which is what I highlighted in the book, means voluntary physical activity that is planned, structured, repetitive, and undertaken to sustain or improve health and fitness. Now, the reason why I wanted to make sure to mention that, I want you to go back to that first word that I said once I started reading the definition. Exercise, noun. Voluntary physical activity that is planned, structured, so on and so forth. So that should get one to start thinking that, like, oh, so well, what's the difference between voluntary movement and involuntary movement? And that's what this book sort of talks about and it mentions, right? So I'll go one step further. This is the other one that I highlighted. This one is physical activity as a noun. Any bodily movement produced by skeletal muscles that expends energy. So again, these are all various concepts that I found to be interesting. I'm pretty sure that I highlighted a lot more than that, but I know that I would be most likely going back and rereading that book. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Amazon page so you can see what some of the other people are talking about in terms of like what they wanted to highlight. And here's the first one that I'll read. This one here. So it says this one was highlighted by 746 Kindle readers. And it's this third one here. Stated simply, we evolved to be as inactive as possible. Or, to be more precise, our bodies were selected to spend enough, but not too much energy on non-reproductive functions, including physical activity. So again, in reading that, one might think, well, wait a minute. I guess what you're saying is that we evolved to basically conserve as much energy as possible because it wouldn't make sense for us to expend a lot of energy when we're not too sure when we're going to get fuel, when we're going to get our next bit of food, when we're going to be able to drink water, because energy was scarce when we were, our early ancestors. We didn't know when we were going to eat. We didn't know what we were going to do. So the whole point would be to basically not waste anything that was out of the scope of reproduction. So our whole point of living basically was to reproduce and to find food, to hunt, to forage, and to reproduce, wash, rinse, and repeat, right? So going to the gym or doing random exercises, I mean, I think a lot of the non-reproductive movement that would have been happening, again, according to some of the research in the book, is things like play, things like maybe dancing, which I guess could also be play, celebrating different things. But I don't think that our early ancestors were doing much of searching out ways to make themselves look more fit. They probably wrestled just to keep themselves strong. They probably danced. Obviously, I think there was a lot of persistence hunters back in the day in certain parts of the world. So there was a lot of that. But I think the whole point of living and thriving back then was to reproduce, to create shelter, to forage and hunt for food, and that was it, really. So anyway, another one here is, put simply, regular movement, including getting up every once in a while, helps prevent chronic inflammation by keeping down postprandial levels of fat and sugar. So postprandial basically is a fancy word for after consumption. And so, like, I always like to suggest to people to do a postprandial walk, which is kind of what this is talking about, which is basically like regular movement, something that we could do normally without having to really change anything about us, without having to change our clothes or have to necessarily time ourselves. Like, I like to make a point to always get some kind of movement after I eat something. And I always like to say that if you don't have the energy or the ability to move after eating, then you might want to rethink, if like, the importance of actually eating in that moment. And so anyway, especially if you're going to be eating a meal that is higher in sugar, then you probably want to get some movement after that. And then here's another highlight: make exercise necessary and fun. Do mostly cardio, but also some weights. Some is better than none. Keep it up as you age. And like, that should be just kind of like a low hanging fruit that I think most of us understand. I hope we understand. But to wrap all this up, I wanted to just kind of go over what I see here as a summary, because I think this will kind of help lay even more of a groundwork for you to really dive into this book and maybe keep this as something that you have, like, in your back pocket, in terms of random information to know about. And again, this is just another way to understand how my brain works, because these are the concepts that I understand and that make sense to me. I'm not saying that I totally agree with every single thing in this book. Doesn't mean I have to. However, I think there is a lot of things in here that make me go, hmm. So I'll read this and then we'll wrap it up. Hopefully we can create a conversation around this. And then eventually I'd like to start doing more discussions with you as the listener and as the viewer, so we can talk about certain concepts and see if we can incorporate some of this into our own lives. So here we are. If exercise is healthy, so good for you, why do many people dislike or avoid it? These engaging stories and explanations will revolutionize the way you think about exercising, not to mention sitting, sleeping, sprinting, weightlifting, playing, fighting, walking, jogging, and even dancing. This here strikes a balance of scholarship, wit, and enthusiasm. This was a quote by Bill Bryson, New York Times bestselling author of The Body. And then there's a few key points here that I'll go through. If we are born to walk and run, why do most of us take it easy whenever possible? Does running ruin your knees? That was an interesting one, because obviously, me being a foot health coach, and I talk about a lot of concepts and lead a lot of education around all things Vivo Barefoot and the feet in general, and how it's our foundation. That portion of the book was really interesting to me. The other part, I mean, all of them are really, but that one was really hitting home. Here's another one. Should we do weights, cardio, or high intensity training? I kind of touched on that a little bit. Is sitting really the new smoking? And that's an interesting one, because I'm sure many of us right now watching and listening to this have probably heard at some point that sitting is the new smoking, and everything becomes the new smoking, right? But then one might think, well, does standing mean that that's better than sitting? But we can even stand too much as well, right? So we can sit too much, we can stand too much. My whole thing is, our bodies constantly crave movement until we go to sleep. And so if we can understand that, then maybe sitting on the ground is the best thing for us, because you're probably not going to stay in one position for too long because it doesn't feel great. And I think this brings up the notion of, why do we always search out for comfort? I think that's what our bodies were biologically meant to do, was to reduce energy expenditure, especially if it's non-reproductive needs, then or activities, then it's like, why are we doing it? But we somehow have messed ourselves up so much to the point to where we have to like try to undo sedentary lifestyles, and within that sedentary lifestyle, being able to have food and drinks at our disposal whenever we want by picking up a phone and not having to actually hunt for it or look for it or search for it or move to get it, right? And so we have to try to undo that. But does it really make sense? That's what this book points out. So I'll mention a couple other points and then I'll finish reading this. It asks, can you lose weight by walking? I'll answer that for you. Absolutely yes. In fact, there's they didn't talk about this in this book, but there's some new research to come out to talk about this new idea or this trend of Japanese walking, which very simply put is just doing intervals of walking at a normal pace and then increasing that pace to your sort of your walking max speed and then reducing it back to a normal walking pace and just doing that over and over and over. So it's almost like high intensity interval training, but with walking instead of running or rowing or jump rope or something more intense. So, that's pretty interesting. I think to me, it's like a no brainer, duh. But I think walking is kind of the lowest hanging fruit that we should all be able to do if you're capable of walking, that is, of course. So that's an easy yes, just to kind of give you a little bit of a spoiler, big spoiler alert. Then the last question here is, and how do we make sense of the conflicting, anxiety inducing information about rest, physical activity, and exercise with which we are bombarded? Boom. I think that's a perfect question to leave it there because that's what this book is all about. It says, in this myth busting book, Daniel Lieberman, professor of human evolutionary biology at Harvard University and a pioneering researcher on the evolution of human physical activity, tells the story of how we never evolved to exercise, to do voluntary physical activity for the sake of health. Using his own research and experiences throughout the world, Lieberman recounts without jargon how and why humans evolved to walk, run, dig, and do other necessary and rewarding physical activities while avoiding needless exertion. Exercise is entertaining and enlightening, but also constructive. As our increasingly sedentary lifestyles have contributed to skyrocketing rates of obesity and diseases such as diabetes, Lieberman audaciously argues that to become more active, we need to do more than medicalize and commodify exercise. Drawing on insights from evolutionary biology and anthropology, Lieberman suggests how we can make exercise more enjoyable rather than shaming and blaming people for avoiding it. He also tackles the question of whether you can exercise too much, even as he explains why exercise can reduce our vulnerability to the diseases mostly likely to make us sick and kill us. Whoa, there you go. So that's Exercise. Great book. I can't recommend it enough, but I definitely suggest going out, picking up a copy, regardless of if you are a physical book reader, if you're an audiobook listener, or you're a digital book reader. Do like me if you want, if you're as crazy as I am when it comes to this. And I do all three. So I have the audiobook of this, I've got the digital book of this, and I've got the paperback book. So that's how much I like this book, and I hope you enjoy it as well. If you have questions or comments, or you want to get involved, search for me on Goodreads. Let me actually stop sharing this page. That's good enough there. So if you want to find me on Goodreads or Readwise, I don't know if you can follow me on Readwise, but you can definitely find me on Goodreads. So let's see if that pulls up. Oh, doesn't look too fun. But this is the Goodreads app. And you can search for people. And this is my profile. Let's see if this pulls up a QR code or something. I don't know. Well, there you are. There's my profile, and then you can see like some of the books that I have read, the books that I'm reading. According to this, I've read 108 books, and it'll show like some of my favorites on there. I guess I could start a reading challenge. Maybe I will do that, because a while ago I did a book a week challenge, like 1 book a week. And that was really fun. I learned a lot. And this app was very helpful because I got a chance to go back and look at, okay, got this and that. But then the Readwise app is also very helpful because reading a book a week, sometimes big books like this, means I'm probably not retaining all that information. So it's really helpful to have something to fall back on like this. So that's that. That's enough. If you have questions, hit me up. Let me know. And maybe send some comments on some books that you would like for me to read. Maybe I've already read them. Maybe I haven't. But I love getting good book recommendations. And it doesn't have to always be about health and wellness and fitness. It can be nonfiction. It can be fiction. It can be love stories. It can be whatever. But I kind of like it all. But clearly, I love the science, health, and wellness stuff. Anyway, until next time, this is Josh signing off with Simply Walk the Talk. Peace.
Walk the talk, talking facts. Move like me, but I move a little fast. Make my move, here to last. Fasten these seatbelts, I'm coming past. Take care of me, longevity. Hack my biology, better believe. Walking the talk, soul, mind, and body connected. Better come give us a listen. Better come give us a minute or two. Open the box up, we giving you tools. Giving your engine the fuel that it needs. Breathing into it, it's autoimmune. Make a connection, we're stronger in two. Making us one of a kind of a few. Work on the mind, but show me your moves. If you do what you say, you know what to do. Yeah.
Simply walk